What happens when love turns into obsession and a broken heart refuses to heal? This is the chilling story of a young woman's attempt to move forward and the ex-boyfriend who wouldn't let her go. It's a tale of heartbreak, dangerous obsession, and the terrifying lengths some will go to when they believe love has slipped through their fingers. Stay with us as we explore how one man's refusal to move on spiraled into a nightmare. Mia Hart was the kind of person who could make anyone feel at ease with her warm smile and kind personality. Growing up in the quiet town of Maplewood, she was known for her positive energy and optimism. But behind her cheerful demeanor, Mia was nursing a broken heart. She had recently ended her long-term relationship with her high school sweetheart, Lucas Hayes, and it had left her feeling fragile. Lucas had been her first love, someone she had shared her dreams and hopes with. He was the golden boy of their high school, the star quarterback everyone admired. In the beginning, their relationship felt perfect. They were the couple everyone envied. But as time passed, things began to change. Lucas became possessive, his charming nature giving way to controlling behavior. He always found ways to make Mia feel guilty, twisting situations to suit his narrative. Mia tried to hold on, hoping things would improve, but they never did. Eventually, she realized she had to leave, even though it broke her heart. Mia decided to start over. She moved to Ridgeview, a lively city far from the memories of her past. It was a chance to rebuild her life and rediscover herself. She found a job as a graphic designer at a marketing agency and quickly fell into a routine that kept her busy. She joined a yoga class, explored her new city, and surrounded herself with new friends who brought joy and laughter into her life. Slowly, she began to heal. The weight of her past started to lift, and for the first time in a long time, Mia felt free. Meanwhile, back in Maplewood, Lucas was struggling. Outwardly, he appeared to be moving on. He worked at his father's construction company and occasionally went on dates, but behind the scenes, Lucas couldn't let go of Mia. To him, she wasn't just an ex-girlfriend. She was his anchor, the person who gave his life meaning. Without her, he felt lost and incomplete. Late one night, Lucas found himself scrolling through social media. That's when he stumbled upon Mia's profile. In her photos, she looked radiant and full of life. She was smiling with her new friends, exploring her city, and even posing with someone who looked like he might be more than a friend. Seeing Mia so happy without him hit Lucas hard. His sadness turned to anger as he stared at the images. In his mind, Mia wasn't just living her life, she was leaving him behind. Lucas's obsession grew. The more he looked at Mia's pictures, the more convinced he became that she was pretending to be happy, that she still needed him. He couldn't accept the idea of her moving on, and the jealousy he felt began to consume him. Lucas decided he needed to find her. In his mind, their story wasn't over, and he wasn't about to let her go without a fight. At first, Lucas's curiosity about Mia's life seemed harmless. He would scroll through her social media to see how she was doing, telling himself it was normal to check in on someone he had cared about for so long. But what started as occasional glances turned into something much more intense. He created a fake account to follow her, liking her photos anonymously and reading through the comments. With each post, Lucas began to build a story in his mind. He convinced himself that Mia wasn't truly happy and that she was only pretending to move on. He believed she still needed him, even if she didn't realize it. As Lucas spent more time piecing together Mia's new life, his fascination became an obsession. He noticed the little details in her photos, the yoga studio she mentioned, the coffee shop she visited, and the friends she tagged. To Lucas, these weren't just harmless updates, they were clues about her routine and her world. He started tracking these details, imagining himself stepping back into her life. In his mind, this wasn't stalking, it was love. He believed he was fighting for their relationship, holding on to something that still mattered, even if it was only to him. One day, Lucas saw a post that shook him to his core. Mia was out to dinner with someone named Adam. The caption was light and casual, but the sight of her smiling with another man was unbearable. Jealousy surged through Lucas as he stared at the photo, analyzing every detail. He felt betrayed. How could Mia move on so quickly? How could she laugh and enjoy herself with someone else when he was still grieving their relationship? To Lucas, this was a sign that she was erasing him from her life, and he couldn't accept it. The more Lucas thought about Mia's new life, the more his feelings of sadness turned into anger. He didn't just want to win her back anymore. He wanted to make her see the pain she had caused him. He started justifying his obsession, convincing himself that Mia needed to be reminded of what they had shared. In his twisted perspective, she wasn't just moving on, she was betraying everything they had been together. Lucas began to take his obsession offline. He started going to the places he knew Mia frequented, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. First, he kept his distance, watching from afar as she went about her day. But each time he saw her, it only fueled his anger. It wasn't just that she had moved on, it was that she seemed happy, as if their years together had meant nothing. Lucas couldn't stand the thought of her living a life without him. His obsession took over every part of his life. He thought about Mia constantly, replaying their past and imagining confrontations in his head. He wanted her to notice him again, to acknowledge the pain she had caused. But more than anything, he wanted her to feel the hurt he was carrying. What had started as longing had turned into something far more dangerous, and Lucas was losing control of the emotions he could no longer contain. It was a rainy evening, and the streets glistened under the soft glow of the streetlights. Mia left her yoga class, feeling a little lighter after the stress of the day. She carried her mat and made her way to her car, enjoying the quietness of the evening. Everything seemed normal, or so she thought. As she unlocked her car, she felt a presence nearby. She looked around, and her heart skipped a beat. There, standing across the street, was Lucas. His face was partially hidden under a baseball cap, but she recognized him immediately. Her chest tightened. What was he doing here? She hadn't seen him in over a year, and she had deliberately made sure he had no way of knowing where she lived. Mia quickly got into her car, trying to stay calm as she drove home. Her mind raced with questions. How had Lucas found her? She had moved to this city to leave him and their toxic past behind. She had deleted him from her life, no phone calls, no social media, no mutual friends who could give away her location. Yet, here he was. In the days that followed, Lucas started to appear more often. At first, it seemed like a coincidence. He was outside her office one day, leaning casually against his truck. Another time, he was at the corner near her gym. Each time, he acted like it was pure chance that their paths crossed. But Mia knew it wasn't. It was too deliberate, too frequent. Then the flowers started arriving. A bouquet of her favorite flowers was left on her doorstep, with no note. At first, she hoped it wasn't from him, but deep down, she knew the truth. A few days later, she found a handwritten note in her mailbox. The words were short but unsettling. It was clear Lucas was watching her, and he wasn't planning on stopping anytime soon. Mia's anxiety began to grow. She blocked his number, hoping it would make him stop, but it didn't. He started sending messages from unknown numbers. The tone of his messages shifted from pleading for her attention to hints of anger and frustration. It was clear he didn't accept their breakup, and he seemed to believe she was just going through a phase. Her unease turned into fear one evening when she returned home to find her apartment door slightly open. She froze in the hallway, her heart pounding. Cautiously, she stepped inside, scanning the room. Nothing seemed to be missing or out of place, but the thought that someone had been inside her home left her shaken. She immediately contacted her building manager to have the locks changed, but the sense of violation didn't go away. Mia tried to maintain her routine, but it became increasingly difficult. She felt like she was always being watched. Sometimes she would catch glimpses of Lucas's truck parked near her building, or she'd spot him lingering at the cafe she visited after work. The once vibrant city that had been her refuge now felt like a cage. Her friends grew concerned as Mia became more withdrawn. They urged her to go to the police, but Mia hesitated. Lucas hadn't directly threatened her, and she wasn't sure what the police could do. She didn't want to escalate the situation, fearing it might provoke him further. Part of her hoped he would eventually give up and leave her alone. But Lucas wasn't just trying to reconnect. His actions were no longer about love or heartbreak. They were about control. In his mind, Mia's happiness without him was a betrayal, and he couldn't accept it. He began showing up more frequently, each appearance more invasive than the last. Mia realized she couldn't ignore the situation anymore when her friends pointed out how much it was affecting her. She was constantly looking over her shoulder. Her anxiety was overwhelming, and she couldn't focus on work or enjoy her life. Lucas's presence was suffocating, and she knew she had to take action before things got worse. Despite her fear, Mia started to gather evidence of Lucas's behavior. She saved the messages, took photos of his truck outside her building, and documented every encounter. She knew it was the only way to make the police take her seriously. Lucas wasn't just a man grieving a lost relationship. He was a man determined to impose himself into her life, no matter what it cost. The situation had spiraled far beyond anything Mia had ever imagined. What started as a toxic relationship had turned into a dangerous obsession, and Mia could no longer pretend it wasn't happening. It wasn't just her peace of mind at stake, it was her safety. Mia arrived home one night after a long day, expecting nothing more than to relax and unwind. But as she approached her apartment, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Her front door was slightly open. Her heart raced as she stepped inside. Everything seemed normal at first glance. Her keys were still on the counter where she had left them, her laptop was untouched, and there were no signs of forced entry. But as she moved further into the room, she froze. On the coffee table was a single sheet of paper neatly placed in the center. The words written on it sent a chill down her spine. "You can't ignore me forever." Her body tensed as she stood there, trying to process what had happened. Someone had been inside her home, someone who knew her well enough to leave such a personal and unnerving message. She didn't need to guess who it was. Everything pointed to Lucas. He had crossed a line, and the realization hit her hard. Her sanctuary, the one place she felt safe, had been violated. The sense of vulnerability that followed was overwhelming. That night, Mia couldn't sleep. She checked her locks over and over again, placed a chair under the doorknob, and kept the lights on. Every small sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the refrigerator made her jump. Her mind raced, replaying the moments of Lucas's escalating behavior, his unannounced appearances, the cryptic texts, the flowers left at her doorstep. All of it now felt more sinister than ever. The next day, Mia decided to take action. She went to the police station and explained everything that had been happening. She told them about Lucas, his obsessive behavior, the times he had shown up uninvited, and now the note left in her apartment. The officers listened intently and assured her they would help. They helped her file a restraining order, a legal boundary meant to keep Lucas at bay. For the first time in weeks, Mia felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that she was taking control of the situation, but Lucas saw the restraining order as a challenge, not a barrier. In his mind, it wasn't an indication of Mia's fear or discomfort. To him, it was a signal that she was still thinking about him. Lucas convinced himself that she didn't truly want him gone, that she was just confused or being influenced by others. He twisted the situation in his head to justify his actions, refusing to accept the reality that Mia wanted nothing to do with him. Lucas's obsession began to spiral even further. He started sending text messages from unknown numbers, knowing Mia had blocked his primary number. The messages were vague but unsettling, filled with phrases like, "You're making this harder than it has to be," or "We both know this isn't over." These texts came at all hours, breaking into her attempts to rebuild some normalcy in her life. Mia stopped looking at her phone before bed, terrified of what she might see. She deleted every message as soon as she read it, hoping to erase the weight they carried. Mia's friends urged her to leave her apartment and move somewhere new. They suggested she change her routine, find a different job, or even consider moving to another city. But Mia resisted. She felt a deep sense of frustration that Lucas's actions were forcing her to upend her life. She didn't want to give him the power to dictate her choices. Instead, she installed additional locks on her doors, set up security cameras, and began looking over her shoulder wherever she went. The fear Lucas had instilled in her lingered in every corner of her life. The breaking point came one evening when Mia agreed to go out for dinner with Adam, a co-worker who had been a source of support through all of this. Adam was kind and thoughtful, someone who brought a sense of normalcy back into her world. Their dinner was light-hearted and filled with laughter. For the first time in weeks, Mia felt like herself again. As they left the restaurant, she felt a moment of relief, a glimpse of hope that life could return to how it once was. But her relief was short-lived. In the parking lot, under the dim glow of the streetlights, stood Lucas. He had been waiting for her. The sight of him froze Mia in her tracks. Lucas's posture was tense, his eyes focused solely on her. It was clear he had seen her with Adam, and his presence was anything but coincidental. The tension in the air was suffocating as Lucas approached them. Before Mia could react, Lucas's anger boiled over. He confronted Adam, his frustration and jealousy spilling out in a chaotic confrontation. The situation quickly escalated. Lucas, consumed by his emotions, lashed out at Adam, pushing him against a car. The noise drew the attention of bystanders, who called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived, pulling Lucas away as he shouted incoherently, blaming Mia for everything. As Lucas was taken away in handcuffs, Mia stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined things would escalate this far. The man who had once been her boyfriend had turned into someone unrecognizable. That night, as she returned to her apartment, Mia couldn't shake the weight of what had just happened. The fear Lucas had planted in her life was something she knew would take time to overcome, but she promised herself she wouldn't let it consume her. Lucas was arrested that night. The police quickly gathered evidence of his obsession, the restraining order he violated, and the assault on Adam. In court, Lucas presented himself as the victim. He claimed he had been wronged by Mia and painted a picture of a man who was simply trying to salvage what he thought was love. But the evidence was undeniable. The police had records of his harassment, threatening messages, and even witnesses who had seen his unhinged behavior. The judge showed little sympathy. Lucas was sentenced to 6 months in jail for assault and violating the restraining order. For Mia, the arrest brought temporary relief. She was grateful that Lucas was finally being held accountable, but the damage he had caused couldn't be undone overnight. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a constant reminder of the fear she had lived with. Every creak of the floorboards or shadow outside her window sent her heart racing. She knew she couldn't stay there. It was time to start fresh. Mia moved to a new apartment in a different part of the city. The building had extra security, including gated entrances and security cameras, which helped her feel safer. She changed her phone number, deleted her social media accounts, and made it nearly impossible for Lucas to find her when he got out of jail. Even though he was behind bars, she couldn't shake the feeling that he might still be watching, waiting for his moment to reappear. Rebuilding her life wasn't easy. Mia leaned on Adam and her closest friends, who became her lifeline during this difficult time. Adam stood by her side, offering support without pushing her to move faster than she was ready. He understood that the trauma Lucas had caused wouldn't disappear overnight. Slowly, Mia began to take small steps toward reclaiming her independence. She started therapy to work through her fears and regain her confidence. Therapy became a critical part of her healing. At first, it was hard for Mia to open up. Talking about Lucas, the fear he instilled, and the way he had manipulated her felt like reliving the nightmare. But over time, her therapist helped her see that none of this was her fault. Lucas's actions were a reflection of his inability to handle rejection, not of anything Mia had done wrong. She began to understand the importance of setting boundaries and recognizing red flags in relationships. While Mia was working to move forward, Lucas's time in jail was not a time of reflection or growth. He remained convinced that he had been wronged and that Mia had betrayed him. Instead of taking responsibility for his actions, he doubled down on his belief that he had been a victim. He refused to acknowledge the harm he had caused both to Mia and to himself. Lucas's behavior isolated him further. Friends who had once supported him began to distance themselves, unable to reconcile the man they knew with the person who had become so consumed by obsession. His parents, heartbroken by his choices, visited him in jail, but even they found it difficult to connect with him. They wanted to help, but Lucas's refusal to take accountability made it impossible to offer meaningful support. Back in her new life, Mia was making progress, though the scars of what she had endured remained. She focused on her work as a graphic designer, finding comfort in the creativity it required. Adam continued to be a steady presence in her life, and their bond grew stronger over time. They started going on small adventures together, hiking trails, outside the city, attending local art shows, and even trying new restaurants. These moments reminded Mia that joy was still possible, even after everything she had been through. But there were still hard days. Mia occasionally found herself looking over her shoulder, wondering if Lucas might find her again. Even though she knew she had done everything possible to protect herself, the fear he had instilled in her didn't disappear overnight. It was a process, and Mia had to remind herself that healing wasn't linear. Some days were easier than others, but she was determined to keep moving forward. Over time, Mia began to feel like herself again. She smiled more, laughed freely, and allowed herself to dream about the future. Lucas had taken so much from her, but he hadn't broken her spirit. She had survived, and now she was thriving. Her journey wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning from it and using it to grow stronger. Mia's story became a testament to resilience. It was a reminder that even in the face of fear and trauma, it's possible to rebuild and find happiness again. Though Lucas's actions had cast a long shadow, Mia refused to let it define her. She was no longer the woman living in fear of her ex-boyfriend's obsession. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to take on the future on her own terms. This story shows how love can turn dangerous when it's fueled by obsession and control. What would you have done differently if you were in Mia's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Crime Lab Chronicles for more gripping stories that explore the darkest corners of human nature. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.